Now this is a story all about how the different species came about. I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how there's different species of birds in the air.
In the Galapagos Islands, born and raised, where Charles Darwin spent most of his days. Checking out animals, observing the beach, looking at birds and their different shaped beaks when a couple stood out and he couldn't understand. They had different looking mouths but they shared the same land. He made one little theory that they were all related. The birds evolved, his theory stated.
So the first idea we're going to talk about is the biological species concept. This is a concept that allows you to differentiate between different species. It requires that two things be true. One, that individuals in a population can mate and produce fertile offspring, and two, that individuals in different populations would mate and could produce fertile offspring if they came in contact naturally. Naturally just means that they're not being forced to in a lab or in a small enclosure. However, there are some problems with the biological species concept. Three main things. The first is that there are species that interbreed and produce fertile offspring, even though they're of different species, such as lions and tigers. A second thing is that how do you know if two organisms will make fertile offspring if they never actually meet, if they live on different sides of the globe? And a third thing that is a major problem with this concept is that it doesn't apply to asexual species. So the ecological species concept is an alternative to it. It states that species are different species are the same if they're based on the organism's ancestral lineage and that they've adapted to fit their environment. They also have to be organisms that adapt following stabilizing selection, and if they make hybrids and the offspring is sterile or unhealthy, the hybrids will die off. If it fits these three things, then it is the same species as defined by the ecological species concept.
There's two main ways for speciation. Allopatric is geographic separation. Sympatric species have the same habitat, but they're reproductively different. How about that?
So there are two different types of speciation, allopatric and sympatric. Sympatric speciation is when species share the same habitat, but they have become reproductively isolated for a certain reason. These reasons we will discuss later in the video. The other type is allopatric speciation, which is simply species that no longer share the same habitat, so they have become geographically isolated.
Now listen up, this might require some concentration. I'll teach you all about prezygotic isolation. These prevent species from making a zygote. There are 4 types that we'll cover in the side note.
So the next thing we're talking about is prezygotic isolation, and there's 4 main things. So geographic isolation, this is when two organisms are separated by distance or a physical feature that they cannot cross, such as a new river that separates two previously connected pieces of land. Another type of prezygotic isolation is mechanical isolation. This is when two organisms physically can't mate anymore or have adapted to look a specific way that makes it so they can't mate with each other. The third type is behavioral isolation. This is when two organisms have separated by mating rituals that have changed or are no longer recognizable to each other. For example, the song or dance of a bird that has changed so that it no longer attracts birds of its previous species to it. The fourth type is temporal isolation. This is when two organisms have become separated by time. Basically, their breeding times are too different for each other. If one species' mating season no longer overlaps with each other, then they will gradually evolve into different species.
Polyploidy is a complicated process. We'll teach you this, but it might sound like nonsense.
So, speciation caused by polyploidy is the next topic we'll discuss. Allopolyploidy is when two organisms have different species that have multiple chromosomes caused by non-disjunction. They both have the same non-disjunction, so then they're able to mate with each other, and this is another way that a new species may come about.
The This next part is on post-zygotic. Listen close, or this may get a bit chaotic. These affect the zygote after it is formed, prevent it from functioning like the norm.
So now we're going to talk about post-zygotic isolation, which is a process that prevents hybrid zygotes from developing into normal, functioning, fertile adults. In other words, the animals still mate, but the offspring never forms into a fully functioning adult, which differs from pre-zygotic, which is when the animals can't mate.
Next on the list is adaptive radiation. When a species is placed in a new location, this can be the result of a key innovation. We'll explain this in our next presentation.
Adaptive radiation is another way that separates species from each other. This is when two closely related species have recently evolved from a common ancestor by adapting to different parts of their environment. This process can occur as a result of three circumstances. First, one species is spread out to multiple environments. Second, following a catastrophe such as a natural disaster or extinction, the species spreads out to fill in the place where the catastrophe occurred and replace the species that died off. Third, the species are separated by the creation of a key innovation, which is simply a trait that they didn't have before that allows it to take advantage of a brand new environment. The next thing we're going to talk about is character displacement. This is when multiple adaptations at one time, all designed to help an organism avoid competition. For example, some birds may develop different types of beaks to take advantage of being able to eat different seeds. So they all adapt differently to avoid competition.
Now let's talk about gradualism and also about punctuated equilibrium.
So there are multiple ways that scientists represent the pace of evolution. The two we're going to talk about is gradualism versus punctuated equilibrium. The gradualism model is the slow morphological change over time that shows this pace of evolution. On the other hand, the punctuated equilibrium model shows sudden changes over time, such as genetic drift, a meteor, or a brand new gene entering a population. A good example of this is dinosaurs, because after they became extinct, this led to a massive explosion of mammals, which was a sudden change over time.
This last slide is on extinction number 6. This is all because of humans.
And the last thing we're going to talk about is the sixth extinction. There have been 5 mass extinctions since the beginning of life on Earth. However, not all groups are affected equally by mass extinctions. It just depends what the extinction is and how it makes different organisms survive depending on what they need to survive, whether they live in the ocean or whether they live on land or whatever. And the sixth extinction, according to scientists, is currently underway at the rate that humans are killing on our other species and making them go extinct. It is the process by which this next extinction may happen. And that is our speciation video.